Hi everyone, I'm Ariane Zersher, and today we're going to be learning the Pekinese Stitch, which I'm really excited to show you because it can be used for all kinds of things, outlining a shape or making a stem, all different applications, and used with all different threads. So we will be doing that today, and I would love it if you would join me and stitch along. This is the Pekinese stitch. So it begins with a back stitch, which I've begun here. I'm using a number 5. This is Sue Spargo's Variegated Eleganza. It's in number EZM 27. For the number 5 and the number 3, I'm going to use a number 18 chenille needle. For the number 8, I'm going to use a number 24 chenille needle for this stitch. To weave in and out, I'm going to use a tapestry needle. And you can see the tapestry needle has a blunter tip than the chenille. The chenille is going to be pointy. This has got a blunter tip, and it's not going to catch on threads when I weave in and out. And we start with a back stitch. I've already whip stitched my wool circle on in a different color. The back stitch, if you're not familiar with it, is a very simple stitch and a base for many other stitches. So my thread is going to come out here. I'm going to put my needle in some distance away from this one, not too far, not too close. And then I'm going to come out on the other side of the thread. Equidistance is my goal. So you can see that this distance from here to here is the same. That's what you're shooting for. Now, the tension is everything, because if your tension is taut, you're going to find that your circle begins to pull in on itself and even pucker to the point where this begins to pull out, and you don't want that. And I want to come right up against the edge of that applique. And as I said, I continue this way until I've come right back to my first stitch, just right there, and that's where I end. So there I have my back stitch. I'm going to tie this off because I want to use a different thread to weave in and out. I'm going to hide my thread in the back, not that it really matters. See how it works. So this is going to be a number 5. This is EZM 16. I'm going to use my tapestry needle that I showed you before with the blunt tip. When I thread, it's easier for me to hold my thread in my right hand, and because I'm left-handed, I'm holding my needle in my left, and bring my needle to the thread. And then it just very easily goes in. It's much easier to thread this way than to hold my needle in this hand, hold my thread in this, and try to get the thread into the eye of the needle. I'm going to do a quilter's knot. You hold your needle in your left hand, you position your thread underneath the needle, you wrap around twice, pull the needle through, holding those wraps in the left hand, and there you have a nice little knot. When I think about using this thread and wrapping it, I want my larger loop, and you'll see what I mean when I start doing it, to be on the outside and not on the inside, which means that I'm going to start with my appliqued circle above me. I'm going to bring my first stitch to the outside of that stitch. I'm going to pull it up. I'm now going to go in to the neighboring stitch on the left. I'm going to pull my needle and my thread up. I'm going to hold that excess with my right thumb, I'm going to put my needle down through that stitch so that the loop, the excess thread that's a loop here that I'm holding with my right thumb, is beneath. I'm going to pull my thread through, and then I'm going to decide how much of a loop do I want. And I don't want much, so I'm actually going to pull it, not so it's taut, but just so that it's lying there. And this one is going to be snug against the row of back stitch and my applique wool. Now I'm going to go 1, 2 over, and I'm going to go with my needle, I'm going to go through that stitch, pulling my thread up, holding with my right thumb, and I'm going to pull my thread through. Now I don't want this big loop here, so I am going to make sure that that's lying against the row of back stitch. This is where my thread's coming out. I skip a stitch and I go into the next stitch that hasn't been used. I pull my thread through. I'm going to keep my thread the way I want it, and I'm going to pull this through. So what you can see here is that this stitch on the top that's going between the row of back stitches and the applique is going every stitch. This stitch is going every other, which is why you're getting a bigger loop. And because I'm using a tapestry needle with a blunt tip, I don't need to worry about picking up a lot of excess wool or parts of the thread that I don't want. Now, another thing that you can do is if you don't have a tapestry needle, you can use your regular number 18 chenille needle, but you use the back of it. And that's another way of doing this so that you don't pick up a lot of other stuff. And I'll show you what I mean in just a second with this one. So if this were a regular chenille needle, I would go in like this. That solves the problem there. I wanted to show you the book that I'm using, which all these stitches are in. It's Creative Stitching by Sue Spargo. And this stitch in particular is the Pekinese Stitch. It's on page 40 in her Creative Stitching book. And the plan is I will be going through each stitch in her book, in Sue Spargo's Creative Stitching book, at least one stitch a week. Now, some people use thimbles. I don't. Every now and then I'll use a kind of suede dot that has a gluey backside that you can just sort of stick to the tip of your finger. I've used those. Every now and then I'll use this for my thimble. I like it because this is rubbery and it's got a metal tip to it. It comes in 3 different sizes, I think. I'm pretty sure this is a medium. But typically, unless it's something really difficult to pull through or to push through, I typically don't use a thimble. It's important to remember that when you're using your needle, the needle really does make a difference, because when a needle is really blunt, and this one, then it is, as it's a tapestry needle, then it really is perfect for this kind of weaving in and out of another stitch that's already been laid down. But if you're trying to go through fabric, having a blunt needle is a little like trying to ski with a really old pair of wooden skis. You can do it, but it's not going to make your life fun. It's good to use the wonderful equipment that's now available to us. So I urge you to invest in some good needles. Definitely get a number 18 chenille, a number 24 chenille, And then if you decide to go the route of a tapestry needle, I believe they come in an assortment, and you can get an assortment. If they don't, get a large one that's sort of close to an 18 and one that's close to a 24. As you can see, I'm just moving along here. And because this is a variegated thread, you're starting to see how the variegation moves, kind of flows. And it has this nice change in color. So you're getting this kind of lime green into the pink, back to the lime green. Oh, and that's Merlin. Oh, he's so naughty, isn't he? Merly, you can't do that. Why aren't you napping? Merlin. He's very naughty. And he's an older cat. I'm surprised that he's so playful. I would think he'd just be sleeping all the time, but he doesn't. Anyway, I just ignore him, and that sort of, he'll lose interest eventually. Or not. This is what I have to put up with. Merlin. I'm almost finished here, so I've got my one last stitch that I'm going to come down. And here's the end. So, do you see, if I just put my stitch down through here, I would have this gap here, and I don't want that. So I'm going to go ahead and act as though I'm going to come up here, which is what I would have done normally, right? It's one, this is skip this stitch, go up here. But instead of coming up, I'm just going to put my needle down and through to the back. I'm going to pull it in, and there it is. Now, it just is my luck that that's where the variegation changes, but that's okay. I'm going to do my end here. Merlin's getting ready to pounce. I'm going to hide my thread. A good steam will make all the difference. This iron, I've just plugged it in. It's getting a little bit hot. Merlin is sitting here on the edge. I have to show you Merlin. There's the kitty. Merly, say hi. And look at him sitting just almost on top of that needle. He's very curious. That's hot. It's hot. And I'm just going to press that. And do you see how that just... I hope this has been helpful and you've enjoyed watching it. Please hit the like button and subscribe, because I will be doing one stitch at least once a week and would love for you to stitch along with me.